Hello, children. My name is Bошко, and I will be your teacher for today. For our lesson today, you will need a notebook, a pencil, an eraser, and a mobile phone to take photos in case you think something is important and you want to take note of it. Let's see what we're going to do today. Oh, that's right. Today we're going to talk about tenses. We're going to revise what you have learned about the present simple, the present continuous, the past simple, and the past continuous. So we will talk about the past and the present. So let's get started. Of course, we're starting with the present simple tense. The present simple tense is used for facts, routines, habits, and when we're talking about the future, for timetables and schedules. We often use adverbs of frequency, such as always, usually, often, sometimes, and never when we use the present simple. We use do and does to make negatives and questions in this tense. So, let's try to describe this in more detail. Let's start with affirmative sentences. Affirmative or positive sentences in present simple are just the base form, infinitive, except for the third person singular, he, she, and it. In that case, we add s or es. For example, I work in Novi Sad, but she works in Novi Sad. He works, it works. Znači, za potvrdne rečenice, affirmative, koristimo samo infinitiv, odnosno osnovni oblik glagola, u svim licima osim u trećem licu jednine, he, she, it. U tom slučaju dodajemo nastavak s, odnosno s. Let's see, how do we actually add this? S or es. When do we add s and when do we add es? So for most verbs, we just add s to the base form to make the he, she, and it third person singular form. For example, come, comes. But when the verb ends in one of these ways, we add es. So, for example, watch, it ends in ch. And that's why we add es. Watch, watches. When the verb ends in a consonant, after which we have y, we change the y to I and then we add es. Study, studies. However, if the verb ends in a vowel plus y, we just add s. Enjoy, enjoys. Okay, let's take a look at questions now. How do we get questions? That's right, we need an auxiliary verb. This is a simple tense. So we need to put something here to get a question. What do we use? Exactly, we use the auxiliary verb do. Do you work in Novi Sad? However, like in affirmative and positive sentences, the third person singular is different. Here we use does, and we remove the s from the main verb. So what we did here is actually we added es to the auxiliary verb do, and we removed the s from the main verb. Does she work in Novi Sad? It's simple. Okay. And we also have negative sentences. We use the negative of auxiliary verb do to make the negatives. For example, I don't work in Novi Sad. The negative of auxiliary verb do is don't. We just put it in front of the main verb. However, again, with the third person singular, he, she, it, we don't use do and don't. We use does, and we remove the s from the main verb. So we need the negative of does. She doesn't work in Novi Sad. Okay, so it's simple. Just remember, the third person singular is different in positive, negative, and in questions. So, if you remember this, let's try to practice that a little. Complete these sentences and use the present simple affirmative form. So just the affirmative. Pay attention. Look, who's the subject? Is it the third person singular or is it something else? How do we add the s or es? Okay, have you finished? Let's check. The first one, my sister, write emails. My sister, right. My sister is she. She writes emails. Okay, easy, right? We just add s. Molly and Darren speak French. So the subject here is Molly and Darren. Right, it's two people, right? It's not one person. It's not just Molly or just Darren. It's two people. So this is plural. That means we just leave the base form. Molly and Darren speak French. What about Zach? Zach is a boy. That means it's he, right? Third person singular. Zach goes to school. Okay, so pay attention. Go ends in O. Then that is one of the cases when we add es. Goes. My brother study Mandarin. My brother. My brother is a he, right? Again, we have the third person singular. My brother studies. But how do we add es to this verb? It ends in a y and there is a consonant before it. That means that we change the y to I and then we add es. My brother studies Mandarin. And the last one, I, this is easy. I is the first person singular. I like sport. So we just put the base form, the infinitive, and that's it. Okay, let's try another round. Here you have negatives too, but also a question. So try to do this, pay attention to the subject, and what do you need to add for negatives and questions? That's right, you need an auxiliary verb. Try to remember which one. Okay, have you finished? Let's check. So, in the first one, we have we. We not study English in the afternoon. For negatives, we need the auxiliary verb do or does. For we, it's plural. That means we need do. It's not third person singular, right? So we put we don't study English in the afternoon. The main verb stays in infinitive. Jake study art and music. Okay, we already had study, remember, and it was also third person singular. Jake studies art and music. Now we have play. Jenny play football at school. Okay, again, we have a verb that ends in Y, but pay attention, before Y, we have a vowel, A, right? So we don't change the Y to I. We just add S. Jenny plays football at school. What about the next one? He not live near us. He is third person singular. That means that we need which auxiliary verb? Do or does? Exactly, we need does not live. Doesn't live. He doesn't live near us. The next one is a positive affirmative sentence. I is first person singular, so we just take the base form. I have lunch at home. And the last one is a question, so we need do or does. Let's see who is the subject. The subject is he. Okay, if it's he, then it's third person singular, and that's it. We know that we need does. Does he go to school by bus? Easy, right? Okay, now we're done with present simple, and let's try to talk about the present continuous. We use the present continuous to talk about activities at the moment of speaking. For example, I'm looking for my wallet. I can't find it. Where is it? Or we can use it to talk about temporary situations. For example, she's working at the hotel for the summer. So right now, she's doing that. The time expressions that we use with present continuous are now, at the moment, today, tonight, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, for temporary situations. Okay, so let's take a look at this in more detail. Affirmative sentences or positive sentences. How do we get those? Well, that's easy. Remember, continuous, it needs the ing form of the main verb, but it also has an auxiliary verb already in the affirmative sentences. And that verb is the verb be. It has three forms: am, are, and is. So we get the affirmative sentences by putting the present tense of the verb be, am, are, or is, and the ing form of a verb. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, you are, and they are. After that, we just put the main verb in its ing form. So let's take a look at spelling rules. How do we add ing to the verb? With most verbs, we just add ing to the verb. Eat, eating. With verbs that end in e, we have to remove the e and then we add ing. Write, writing. And with verbs that end in a vowel and a consonant, we double the final consonant and add ing. Also, the vowel has to be short. Stop, stopping. Okay, so let's take a look at questions now. How do we make questions? Well, for questions in English, we usually need an auxiliary verb. And do we already have an auxiliary verb? Yes, we do. It's the verb be. Am, is, or are. So we just invert the verb be in one of its forms and the subject. If the positive sentence is I am playing, the question will be am I playing? Are you listening? Is she working? So we just invert the subject and the auxiliary verb. This makes it easy for the negatives too. Since we already have an auxiliary verb, am, is, or are, we just add not to the auxiliary verb and then we get negative sentences. For example, I'm not playing. You aren't listening. She isn't working. These are the short forms, and the full forms are am not, are not, and is not. And that's it. This is easy, right? Let's try to practice this a little bit. Complete these sentences and use the affirmative present continuous forms of the verbs in brackets. Pay attention to the subject and the form of the verb be that you're going to use. Okay, have you finished? Let's check. I'm sure that you did it well. I walk to school. Okay, I am walking to school. That's right. Whales, whales, plural. So it's they, right? Whales are swimming in the sea. The dog is it, third person singular. The dog is sleeping under the table. We, plural, are writing emails. Pay attention, here we need to remove the E and then we add ing. And the last one, Huan, third person singular, he is practicing the guitar. Here we also had swim in number 2. Swim, we have to double this consonant. Double M, swimming. Okay, let's try to do this now. Complete these questions. Use the present continuous. Okay, have you finished? Let's check. So you have 2 lines, 2 gaps. That means an auxiliary verb goes on one line and on the other one is the main verb. So the first one, what? The animal. The animal is it, right? Third person singular. So we need is. What is the animal doing? And the next one, here we have the solution already. Where are the bears going? The bears are plural. The third one, the big fish. The big fish is it, right? So third person singular is the big fish protecting the smaller fish. Number 4, you. You are, right? Are you watching a nature program on TV? And the last one, the whale. It, right? Is the whale swimming in the sea? Okay, now let's try to use the present simple or the present continuous. Okay, have you finished? Let's see. Number 1, I TV every day. Every day, it's a habit, right? Routine. We need present simple. I watch TV every day. Number 2, Matt have dinner at the moment, right now. That's it, present continuous. Is having. The seals sit on the beach now. Now, present continuous, are sitting. We often do our homework in the library. Just like that. Often. It says how often. It's a habit. And they usually study French on Tuesdays. Also, it's a habit. We need present simple. Okay, now let's go back in time a little bit and talk about the past. We use the past simple tense to talk about actions and events that happened and finished in the past. For example, I met my wife in 1983, or past habits and states, such as Rachel didn't study in Milan, she studied in Naples. Those are cities in Italy, right? Actions that happen one after the other in the past can also be described using the past simple. I got up, brushed my teeth, took my keys, and walked out. One of the expressions that we can use with the past simple is ago. We use ago when we talk about something that happened in the past. For example, I met my wife a long time ago. I moved to Belgrade 5 years ago. Be careful, we put ago after the time period, and in Serbian, pre, it goes before the time period. For example, I moved to Belgrade 5 years ago. Preselio sam se u Beograd pre 5 godina, a na engleskom ago ide iza vremenskog perioda. 5 years ago. Okay, let's see affirmative sentences first. With most verbs, the past tense is formed by adding ed. Call, called. However, as you already know, there are a lot of irregular past tense forms in English, and we have to learn them by heart. Think, thought, speak, spoke, be, was, were, etc. So you have to learn them by heart. Sorry. Let's take a look at spelling now. How do we add ed to verbs? Well, if a verb ends in y and has a consonant before y changes to I, and then we add ed, just like with present tenses. Tidy, tidied. Try, tried. If there is a vowel, we don't change the y to I. If one-syllable verbs and some two-syllable verbs, so short ones, if they end in a consonant, vowel and consonant, we double the consonant before ed. For example, stop, stopped. Travel, traveled. Okay, let's take a look at questions now. For questions, since this is a simple tense, we don't have an auxiliary verb in affirmative sentences. We need to put one for questions and negatives. The one that we use is did. And the main verb is in infinitive then, because did is already indicating the past. Do, did. Did is the past form of do. For example, did she play tennis when she was younger? We can have two answers, short answers to this question. Those are yes, she did, and no, she didn't. Okay, now let's try to look at negatives. Again, we use the auxiliary verb did. Actually, its negative form, didn't, or did not, its full form. And we also use the infinitive of the main verb. For example, they didn't go to Spain last year. She didn't call me yesterday. And that's it. It's not difficult, right? Let's try to practice this a little bit. Put the verbs in brackets in the past simple. Be careful, some of them are regular and some of them are irregular. Okay, have you finished? Let's check. They explore, explore is regular. We just add D since it already ends in E. Explored. Number 2, she stay with us for a week. She stayed. That's right. There is a vowel and then Y, so we don't change it to I. I drink, drink is irregular. Drank. I drank the milk 10 minutes ago. The next one, we think. Think is also irregular. We thought about moving in 2009. And the last one, I not listened to music yesterday. That's right, we need didn't. I didn't listen to music yesterday. Okay, great work. Now let's try to talk a little bit about the past continuous tense. The past continuous tense is used to describe some kind of action in progress in the past. For example, Maria and John were watching birds this morning. We also use it to describe 2 or more actions happening at the same time in the past. Jake was washing the car while Maria was cleaning the windows. Okay, so let's see, how do we get affirmative sentences? We form the past continuous by using the verb be in its past tense, and we use the verb plus ing. Be has 2 forms in the past. Those are was and were. Was is used for the first and third person singular, and were is used for all the other persons. So I was reading a book yesterday, but you were riding your bike last week. Okay, let's take a look at questions now. How do we get questions? Well, we already have an auxiliary verb, was or were. We just put them in front of the subject. Were you playing? Was he listening? And what about negatives? Well, we make the negatives by adding not to the auxiliary verb was or were. I wasn't playing, or in its full form, was not. And you weren't listening, or in its full form, were not listening. Now, since we've learned about the past simple and the past continuous, let's see, how do we use them in combination? So, when we combine these 2 tenses, we are describing a past action in progress, which is past continuous, and then another action happens and interrupts it. So it stops that action. For example, I was walking down the stairs when I saw a huge spider and it stopped me. I stopped walking, so it interrupted that action. Was walking is past continuous and saw is past simple. So now that we know all this, let's try to practice a little bit. So write true sentences about today. Use the past continuous. Okay, have you finished? Let's see. Here are some example sentences that are true for me. I was sleeping at 8:30 a.m. My dad wasn't working at 9 a.m. We weren't doing maths 10 minutes ago. It was raining early this morning. I wasn't riding my bike at 8 a.m. Okay, I know you must feel tired from all this, but I hope not too much. How did you do today? What do you find the most difficult? Is there anything you could improve? Maybe you're something you are not sure of. I hope you had fun in our lesson. See you in the next one. Goodbye.